Do you have a toxic ex? Maybe you do or maybe you don't, but even without having one, I'm sure we can all relate to the feeling of knowing someone that makes us want to crawl out of our own skin and run away, leaving our fleshy exterior behind. Now allow me to pose you a scenario. After enduring a breakup with your partner that should have ended a long time ago, you're left with this initial pain, but overall glad that it happened, because now it's time for growth and the prospect of healing. But as time goes on, your ex begins to go to some disturbing lengths to try and get you back. Non-stop calls, texts from multiple numbers, you even catch them outside of your house one disturbing night. The headlights still on, but then they take notice of you peering out from the sliver of your curtains. They drive off. This isn't the first time it's happened either. This is the third night in a row where they've been in their car, waiting outside of your house. It's a very terrifying scenario. And given these disturbing occurrences, you decide to file a restraining order because that seems like the most logical thing to do, because all of this has gotten completely out of hand. But then one day the calls simply stop. No more texts, no more calls, and no more disturbing unwanted visits to your home. Months go on and the memory and fear evoked from such incidents start to, thankfully, dwindle. You no longer wake up at night dreading the possibility of that car outside of your window. It's over. Maybe the restraining order did scare them. Months later, you find yourself on Instagram and notice that you've gotten a request from a man named Jeremiah. He makes conversation as usual and asks you out on a date. Nothing crazy. The two of you end up meeting up and the exchange is nothing short of a cute first date, but a few dates later you start to notice some cracks in his demeanor. He seems to stifle down anger whenever you bring up an opposing opinion that doesn't align with his. But you decide to ignore this because overall the dates have been fine, and this has kind of just been a little weird thing that's been happening. But you can't help but believe that there is something off, even though on the surface everything should be great. But on one of your dates, you run into one of your close friends, and since Jeremy's with you, you decide to introduce Jeremy to your friend. But right as you do, you get a call that you simply can't ignore, and leave Jeremy and your friend alone while you take the call. It's an officer checking in regarding your restraining order and just making sure that you're overall fine with everything that's happened just months ago. But as you're on the phone with the officer, your friend comes back over and you're forced to end the call. She has this very frantic behavior and is very persistent that you and her leave the date immediately. And before you can even question what's going on as she's shoving you away, taking you home, she tells you that it's him. A week later, you're in court testifying against your ex who underwent 37 plastic surgeries in an attempt to make his way back into your life. Now, this story kind of went viral and was making the rounds on Facebook and Instagram that in 2017, a 40-year-old named James Mack went to disturbing lengths to get back into his ex-girlfriend's life. After she filed a restraining order against him, he underwent 37 plastic surgeries to completely change his appearance. He also legally changed his name to Jason Monroe in an obsessive attempt to bypass the restraining order in order to get close to her again without being recognized and or being put in jail. And despite his drastic transformation, his behavior eventually raised questions. Authorities eventually found out his true identity, and he was arrested for violating the restraining order and for stalking. Quote, "The case shocked many, highlighting the extreme and unsettling measures some individuals may take when obsession takes over." And as terrifying as this story is, and as creepy as it was when I first came across it, after some digging into this case, it is actually a fake story. There is no evidence nor is there news coverage regarding the names mentioned in this story. There is no 40-year-old James Mack Camden, and there is no ex-girlfriend Sarah Lopez. The images used in this story are also unconnected. The photo of the brown-haired man comes from a gallery of before and after images of male facial procedures on a Wisconsin cosmetic surgeon's website, and the photo of the blonde-haired man comes from a series of before and after images of a male model makeover. So this entire story was completely fabricated and a total lie. And I kind of use this as an example to just do some additional research when you do come across these quote news stories on social media. And while this story is completely fake, I did want to use it as a segue to highlight the disturbing lengths that people can go to meet their sinister desires. And as haunting as this fictional tale is that I just debunked, there is a case which I'm going to be talking about in this video that unfortunately surpasses it in every single way when it comes to how deranged a person can get when it comes to obsession. This is a case of Tetsuya Ichihashi, Japan's most disturbed individual. And if you are new here, my name is Wildman, and if you're returning, welcome back. And yeah, we're going to be diving into this pretty disturbing case. I do want to put some TWs in the description of this video, so if there is some stuff that you're uncomfortable with, I would highly recommend checking that out before we dive into this case, because it is pretty disturbing. And before we begin, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment brah, as all these things do help me out a lot. And real quick, we are going to run into a sponsor real quick, just because I do need to pay my bills. After that, we'll get straight into the video. Thanks. Hi everyone, real quick, I do want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is Fume. We all have that moment where we just want to fit in, and for me it used to mean reaching for something that I shouldn't have, and now I carry this. Fume is fantastic at defeating those bad habits, as it has no vapor, no nicotine, just flavor. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device that delivers great taste without any harmful chemicals. Instead of inhaling vapor, you simply breathe in natural, non-toxic flavors that satisfy the craving without the downside of the bad habit. Not to mention that the device itself is super satisfying to fidget around with. It's great for keeping my hands busy and curbing an urge. The design is sleek, portable, and built to last. Designed with a high quality build and a sleek aesthetic. Fume feels premium in your hand and is easy to take anywhere, whether you're at home, work, traveling, or just relaxing at home. And this isn't the first time that Fume has sponsored the channel, and as I've said in the past, personally, my go-to flavor when it comes to Fume is the crisp mint. The taste is just so refreshing and keeps me feeling fresh throughout the day. But there are honestly so many different flavors that if mint isn't your thing, there's definitely something for you. Over 500,000 people have already made the switch to Fume as part of their habit change journey. If you're ready to try it out for yourself, now's the time. For a limited time, if you order the journey pack using my code WOWMAN, you'll get a free Fume topper, an awesome accessory to level up your experience. So click the link tryfume.com/wowman or scan the QR code on screen to get yours today. So to start things off, I do want to discuss what is plastic surgery. I mean, we're all familiar with the procedure, and it's become increasingly more normalized, especially when it comes to Hollywood and reality TV actors. But to define it, plastic surgery is a surgical specialty involving restoration, reconstruction, or alteration of the human body. It can be divided into two main categories: reconstructive surgery and cosmetic surgery. Reconstructive surgery covers a wide range of specialties, including craniofacial surgery, hand surgery, microsurgery, and the treatment of burns. This kind of surgery focuses on restoring a body part or improving its function, that being the key difference. In contrast, cosmetic or aesthetic surgery focuses solely on improving the physical appearance of the body. And while I was researching plastic surgery, it's actually kind of crazy because plastic surgery isn't anything new. In fact, this surgical procedure dates back to Egyptian times in 1600 BC. There are mentions in the Egyptian medical text called the Edwin Smith Papyrus, and in it there are mentions of treatments for the plastic repair of a broken nose. There were also reconstructive surgery techniques being carried out in India by 800 BC. However, diving into more modern techniques when it comes to plastic surgery, this is where the case of Walter Yeo comes into play. Walter Yeo was a UK Royal Navy sailor injured at the Battle of Jutland, which was a naval battle between Britain's Royal Navy Grand Fleet and the Imperial German Navy's High Seas Fleet during the First World War. And on May 31st, 1916, Walter Yeo would sustain terrible facial injuries while manning the guns aboard the battleship. He suffered from the loss of his upper and lower eyelids. Rushed to the hospital after the battle, he was treated by Harold Gillies, the first man to transfer skin from undamaged areas to the body to the places that needed to be treated. During the long process of surgery, a mask of skin was transplanted across Yeo's face and eyes, including new eyelids. The operation to replace the skin of the midface and forehead took place in multiple stages. And throughout history, plastic surgery had always been used as a way to help patients recover from their injuries, never as a means of deception. However, in 2007, a man named Tetsuya Ichihashi used this surgical method for a far more disturbing purpose. It's a cold winter's night, and a boy named Tetsuya Ichihashi returns from school to be greeted by his parents, who have become increasingly concerned for their child's ability to socialize with the other students. Both Ichihashi's parents were both very successful in their careers. His father was a surgeon and his mother was a dentist. Though despite their successful careers, they began to be overshadowed by their troubled child. Now, there isn't much information about Tetsuya Ichihashi's early life, but it is known that he was very antisocial, a trait that would follow him into adulthood. He would struggle a lot in social interactions, especially around women. He had been practicing martial arts and was pretty physically fit. And in his later years, Ichihashi's parents would support him while he studied at Chiba University, and because of his parents' wealth, he never really had to work a day in his life other than work on his studies. But even after graduating from university, Ichihashi had no prospective jobs in sight and would continue to be financially supported by both of his parents. On the other side of the globe, in Coventry, England, a woman named Lindsay Ann Hawker had just graduated with her degree in biology from the University of Leeds. And Lindsay could not have been more of a polar opposite to Ichihashi. She was intelligent, passionate, kind, and incredibly outgoing. And this lust for life would lead Lindsay to pursue a very adventurous decision following her graduation, as she decided to move to Japan in 2006 to work as an English teacher for the Nova language school chain. And it would be there where, after a little less than a year of living there, where she would first cross paths with Ichihashi. One day while waiting for the subway, Lindsay ended up being spoken to a man with a black hood. It was Ichihashi. He had told her that she was his English teacher, but Lindsay knew all of her students and knew that he wasn't one of them. So she politely corrected the 27-year-old and told him that he must be mistaken. Though Ichihashi was persistent and did not accept this, he began to follow her after their interaction and said that he desperately needed an English teacher because he really wanted to study abroad. And Lindsay, feeling sorry for him because of his frantic, almost desperate behavior, she ended up caving and told him that if he really wanted the help, she could help him learn English. Though this was all a lie that Ichihashi had construed in order to make his way into this English teacher's life. It's also assumed that he had been following her for a while now, given that he knew her name and her occupation. This was just the first time he had interacted with her. That same day, Ichihashi begged Lindsay for a glass of water as they were near her apartment now after all of this conversation. He then asked if he could come inside because he really wanted a glass of water. Lindsay, obviously very hesitant at this request, decided that she would tell her roommates before letting him inside so that they could kind of be on their toes if anything were to have happened. And so moments later, Lindsay and Ichihashi went up to her apartment. Her roommates saw him from the moment he came in to the moment he finished his glass of water and stepped out the door. A few days later, Ichihashi and Lindsay had set up their first day of English lessons at a cafe nearby. But as time passed, Ichihashi asked Lindsay if they could go over to his apartment to finish up the lesson for the day. Now, it is unknown why Lindsay granted his request to go with him, but regardless, she did. And once she stepped inside his apartment, she was never seen alive again. The next morning, Lindsay's roommates noticed that she didn't come home last night and immediately notified the authorities. And within the hour, police had surrounded Tetsuya's apartment, but even then they weren't able to apprehend him as Ichihashi had fled the scene in the dead of night. But while Ichihashi was not there, Lindsay was. They found her body on the balcony in a tub filled with sand, and the state they found her body in was incredibly gruesome. So I will let you skip the next 30 seconds of this video if you do not want to hear the specifics. I'll also put a timestamp right here in case you do want to skip. Her body was found, bound, her mouth was gagged, she was covered in bruises, she'd been essayed, and this final detail was never confirmed by authorities, but There were reports that, quote, "Today, police refused to confirm or deny reports that her neck had been broken and her hair cut off and placed in a plastic bag in the home of the suspect, 28-year-old Tetsuya Ichihashi." But no matter how much effort authorities would make, Tetsuya Ichihashi was nowhere to be found. There were several eyewitness reports that claimed to have spotted him in various spots in Tokyo, but even then they just couldn't find him, and it soon became obvious as to why. While Ichihashi was hiding, running from the atrocity that he had just committed, he had no intention of facing the consequences and rotting in a prison cell. So he took matters to extremist territory. He decided that the only way he would get away with his heinous crime was to change his appearance completely. Not just dyeing his hair, not just changing his clothes, but he decided that he would change his entire face by mutilating it. He used box cutters to cut off 2 moles on the side of his face. He used scissors to cut off part of his lower lip, and used sewing needles to change the appearance of his nose. Though this was only a temporary fix until he'd be able to get more money and get a full plastic surgery procedure done to his entire face. And so to get the money, he began working at a construction company in Osaka. He'd been working there for 13 months, saving about 1 million yen, or $6,700 USD. It was also reported that his plan was to save up enough money to get a full plastic surgery procedure to completely change his face and leave the country with the money he'd saved. And this all also left me wondering how he was able to get a job and lay low for so long, because at this point Ichihashi's face was plastered all over in posters in Japan, and his face was circulating on the news. So how was he able to get a job at a construction company not far from Tokyo? Using the name and address of a dead man from Osaka called Kosuke Inu, Ichihashi rarely mixed with his colleagues and spent most of his spare time reading comics and watching videos in his room at the company's dormitory. Nicknamed Lanky because of his height, he's 5'11", Ichihashi never removed his red cap or black-rimmed glasses in public. When he was persuaded to join a company bowling trip in April, he hid behind a colleague in a group photograph. Quote, "We gossiped that he was an odd guy, but I never thought he was a suspect," a former colleague told the Yomiuri Shimbun newspaper. "It occurs to me now that he was saving the money for cosmetic surgery." End quote. But Ichihashi ended up making a fatal mistake that would cost him his freedom and force him to face the consequences of his actions. Because when he finally met his financial goal and went in to get plastic surgery to completely reconstruct his face, he ended up showing the plastic surgeons a picture of what he looked like before he had mutilated his face. And the surgeon recognized him from the posters. Calling the authorities, and after 2 years of being on the run, Ichihashi was finally taken into custody to face punishment for his actions. On July 23rd, 2011, 32-year-old Tetsuya Ichihashi was sentenced to life imprisonment for R and murder. I do want to give a huge thank you to Fume for sponsoring this video, so be sure to check out the link in the description. And I do want to thank all of my beautiful channel members and my ultimate tiers, Kareem Ariano and Alejandra from the Tower.